It's a mock draft Monday. I break down my latest mock draft for you next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Everyone is mocking Abdul Carter to the Browns, so I gave it a whirl to see how things will play out. We'll talk about it. I know a lot of fans want the Browns to go quarterback at 2, but it will be understandable if they don't. I explained that. And what does Jameis Winston's signing to the Giants mean for the Browns' veteran quarterback pursuits? I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast and for making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you will find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends or bonus episodes on certain days. All you got to do, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. And, of course, with the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. This episode brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. As I said, it's a mock draft Monday. Draft getting closer and closer. We are exactly 1 month out from the NFL draft next month in April, which means silly season will finally come to an end. It's been a grind already, and we got a whole month more of craziness and speculation and rumors to come. But good to be only a month out. And in honor of that, we have my latest mock draft for you. I did just the first 3 rounds again. I got to decide if I'm going to do another 3-rounder next week or if I'm going to switch to like the full 7, maybe go to 5. We'll see. But another 3-rounder for you this week. And I like how this one turned out too. And that'll sort of lead into, I think, my second overarching topic I want to get into with you, because I think there's a lot of options at 2, and it's going to be hard to be mad about a lot of them. But I don't want to go there first because I want to show you how this mock draft turned out in the first place. And in lieu of everybody this last week, it seems, talking about the idea of the Browns drafting Abdul Carter at 2 now, that theory seems to be gaining some steam from a lot of the insiders who were doing mock drafts, just fans in general who now seem, there are a lot of fans, it feels like, that are comfortable drafting somebody like Carter at 2 and then going at like 33 or maybe later and drafting Jalen Milroe and being like, okay, we got Jalen Milroe now as our project quarterback. I'm sort of left asking the question of like, okay, so what's your real plan at quarterback if that's your plan? Because if you don't end up with Russell Wilson, maybe it's still Kirk Cousins and you trade for him. But that's the one perplexing thing I have about that. That's not how this draft turned out for me, and I'll flash it up here in a second. But I tried to give some credence to the idea of like, okay, they could take Abdul Carter and then what? And so this is how things shook out for me. As I did in my first mock draft, offense was a major priority. I went all offense with all 4 picks in the top 100. This time around, I get Abdul Carter at 2. So you start off on the defensive side of the ball. You get Myles Garrett, a great partner in crime, if you will, opposite of him on the defensive line, chance to, build a real foundation of pass rushers together that are sort of growing together. And I've highlighted the fact that year over year, it's largely been the Browns like snagging somebody in free agency, like a veteran, or trading for somebody who can just kind of like come in for a year, play with Myles Garrett, see what it looks like, and move on. This would give you a legitimate threat opposite of Myles Garrett that they can kind of grow together as 2 elite pass rushers in this league. And that is kind of an exciting prospect. So I get why Abdul Carter has been brought up. And I do think he's a fair name to mention at number 2. If he goes anywhere in the top 5, no one's going to be batting an eye about it. Like he's that type of player. People are projecting him to be that type of player. And so there is certainly some upside and potential in the idea of Abdul Carter becoming that star player that's worthy of the number 2 overall pick. So I get why that's happening. I took him here just to kind of see how this thing would shake out. And as it did shake out, I still ended up getting Shedeur Sanders at the end of the first round. I traded back up. You're going to see, this is going to be a common theme for me, by the way, in pretty much any of my mock drafts. you will almost always see me trade back up into the first round for obvious reasons. I don't think it's going to going from 29 to 33, like I did with Washington for a second time here, or going from 33 to 29 rather, excuse me, is not that costly of an idea for the Browns, because like you're only going up 5 picks, and for Washington, you only drop back 5 picks, but the Browns get to move back up into the first and get that 5th-year option on a second player. And so that matters. Like, it matters to have 2 players that are going to be under control potentially for 5 years that you don't have to worry about extending right away. They did this, when the Browns were in full-on rebuild mode, right? And the Baker Mayfield draft. I mean, they drafted 3 players in the first round. Like they ended up they drafted David Njoku. I'm sorry, I think that's the Myles Garrett draft where they drafted David Njoku. Like, they came away with 3 first-round picks in that draft in 2017, and so like there's plenty of reason to believe like that the Browns could do that again when they're that close to the first round, trade back up, get a 5th-year option. And so Shedeur Sanders falls in this instance. He's there, and I was like, got to pull the trigger, right? I think the Browns do like Shedeur Sanders. Maybe in this instance they don't like him enough to take him at 2. And I know many fans have said they don't like Shedeur Sanders enough to take him at 2. So this turns out where you still get him, but you get him at a later on in the first. You still get 5 years with him, and you didn't necessarily use like your top flight pick on him. And so it still sort of pans out where you get Shedeur Sanders, you get yourself a quarterback. I've been on the record already saying I like both Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I'd be okay if they took either one at 2. But I also understand where, like, if the board falls this way, yeah, why the hell wouldn't you get Shedeur Sanders later at a later value, but still get the 5th-year option on him? I mean, it's just a smart business if that's how this were to fall. Now, we obviously don't know how if Shedeur Sanders will make it this long. There's so much variation in how he's been evaluated. Sounds like some teams think he could be a top 10 pick. Sounds like some teams think he's a late first rounder. Some people, there's a general consensus since the combine that he's more of a second round quarterback. And so that could leave him falling this far in the first round potentially and allowing some team to draft him. I'm just going to say right now, I don't think he falls this far. I think there's enough teams that need quarterbacks that will take a chance on him even in the mid first round. But if this were to play out this way, then yeah, of course, like trade back up, get him at 29, you got your quarterback, and you get Abdul Carter. To me, like, this draft already is a slam dunk. You get Abdul Carter to pair with Myles Garrett. You get yourself a quarterback that I think is going to be good at the next level. It's a great start to how this thing sort of panned out for me. And by the way, the Titans did take Cam Ward at 1 in this instance as well, which is notable because in my last mock draft, I did take Cam Ward. I actually had to control the Titans to do it because every time I tried to just sim it, they would take somebody like Carter, Travis Hunter. They would never take Cam Ward. So I was like, fine, I'm just going to take destiny in my own hands, and I'm going to play as the Titans as well, and I'll take Cam Ward because the consensus right now is that Cam Ward's going 1 to somebody, and so that's how it sort of panned out. And so he goes 1. That leaves the Browns taking Abdul Carter. And by the way, well, I'll get to that here in a second. I'll kind of keep moving on through here. In this instance, Browns stayed put at 67, and in lieu of needing a running back, they stayed put. Travion Henderson was there. I did not get my guy Caleb Johnson. I did not get my guy Quinshon Judkins. He went in like the 40s. He went pretty quick, pretty early on. And so the board sort of falls this way. Travion Henderson is there. Last mock draft, if you remember, I traded up to 60 to get a running back, and I took Caleb Johnson. In this instance, I stay put. Travion Henderson falls. He's there at 67. I snag him. I think Travion has a chance to be a really good back in the NFL. We know about this running back class already. It's supposed to be super talented. Travion can be a legitimate 3-down back. But I also think like pairing him with somebody, if you were to bring Nick Chubb back, pairing him with somebody who can get some work on certain downs, and then or like sort of all switch in and out with him, and then he becomes like your later down back to maybe start his career, just to sort of preserve him a little bit, and because he's such a good pass catcher and can make people miss in space out in the open. I like the idea of Travion maybe being a certain role and fitting into this running back room with the Browns. But I take him at 67, again, addresses a need, getting some offensive help. And then pick 94 became kind of interesting. And my one regret here, I don't want to say regret, but my one sort of holdup, my one tie-up was the fact that Cameron Williams the offensive lineman, the tackle from Texas, was there at 94 as well. And so this gets into kind of the psyche of where my head was at with this pick, as I take Jalen Noel. He's risen up boards here during the draft process. Slot receiver, really fast. He ran a 4.3 at the combine. Chance to, I think, sort of fill that slot role for the Browns and could be an effective player. And I liked him here. It was good value here as well, as PFF obviously graded it that way. But the reason I was torn was because we know the Browns need a tackle. Now, I'll say this. My one holdup on why I took Noel over Williams, I was thinking about last week and the fact that this team signed Tevin Jenkins, guy who's played all over the offensive line. They're clearly prioritizing offensive line depth. And I don't know what the plan is right now at tackle. We'll start to see some early iterations of how they value these guys during OTAs, and then when they start getting out in the field and doing some stuff. They're out in pads, obviously, but we'll start to see sort of like just who they're throwing out there. And if Tevin, like maybe they are going to let Tevin Jenkins be a rotational guy at any of these positions, not just guard, even though he played guard most recently in Chicago. They obviously signed Cornelius Lucas as well. Maybe they're going to start Cornelius Lucas, have DeJuan Jones as an option. Like they have some other options, and I'm wondering if they're almost going to piecemeal this thing together and then worry about maybe seeing how it goes, and then worry about drafting offensive line next year, depending on what they do with quarterback and all those things this year. So I held off on drafting Cameron Williams, but I don't think you could go wrong there either. And I took Jalen Noel. The value was there. He had sort of fallen a little bit from where he's being slated to be picked. And so I took that. And so in this mock, you get a great edge in Abdul Carter, and you address three of your biggest offensive needs in skill positions at that, in quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. What do you think? Do you like this version of my latest mock draft here for you? And I want to elaborate on this further, because in the vein of drafting Abdul Carter, there's going to be a lot of people upset if the Browns don't take a quarterback at 2. I just know it's going to happen. Fans will be upset. They need this position. Why not take it? But honestly, it's going to be hard to be mad if they end up with either of the other players that are on the table other than quarterback at number 2 overall. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you the visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Take advantage of our all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with a partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. March Madness is here. It got kicked off over the weekend, as we know, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use in everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. Maybe your bracket is busted after opening weekend of the tournament. No worries. FanDuel has plenty of ways for you to earn back that money that you might have spent on a friend's bracket pool, and a chance to even win big if you hit on picks the rest of the way. I've been talking about Maryland already. They had an epic win over Colorado State on Sunday night. Maybe they're a darling of this tournament. We'll see. In the end, though, I do still think Florida has the best shot at winning it all. I know people are picking Duke. There's a lot of different options. So join me in betting the Gators or your favorite team to win the tournament. Plus, the FanDuel app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, so in the vein of this mock draft that I did this week that I flashed up on the screen for you, where I had the Browns taking Abdul Carter, I do want to talk about the idea of, what if the Browns don't take a quarterback at 2? Because here's the thing. Yes, quarterback is this team's biggest need, obviously. And the Browns need to address it in some capacity. There's a number of avenues they could explore to do that. They're already looking in the veteran market, as we know. They're going to draft somebody in this draft. It just depends on who, and maybe multiple guys. We'll see how that shakes out. But and how they value these guys ultimately is at the premise of all that and at the center of all that. That's what's most important. Do they like Jalen Milroe enough to let's pull the trigger on him in the second or third round and pass on somebody at 2? We'll see. But yes, quarterback is the most important need. And I understand where if you're a fan who feels they have to take quarterback at 2 because it's the most important position, it's their biggest need, and you're only in this position every so often to draft this high to get one of these top quarterbacks in the draft. I 100% understand that. And again, I've said I'm good with Cam Ward. I'm good with Shedeur Sanders. I think for different reasons they would fit with the Browns. I think for different reasons they're going to be successful in the NFL. I would take Cam Ward slightly over Shedeur Sanders if they're both available to me. But so I am on the quarterback train. I think I would prefer that they take 1 or 2. But I'm also, if they were to stay put and they were to take Abdul Carter, I don't know that I would be overly annoyed or mad about that. And from a fan perspective, I don't think you should be either, because it does still make sense, from a need standpoint, and it does still make sense from a talent standpoint to take somebody like Abdul Carter at 2. It even makes sense from a talent standpoint to take Travis Hunter at 2 if he's there. Now, what's interesting with Travis Hunter is because the Browns have basically been transparent about the fact that they view him as a receiver. They said that at the combine. Are you taking a wide receiver too? This team that has so many needs, and wide receiver is one of them, but is it that high of a priority? Probably not. If you're telling me the Browns are going to stay put, and I still stand by, if they're not going to take a quarterback at 2, they probably should try to trade back, even one spot with the Giants, and get some more draft capital in return, while still knowing they're going to get a great player regardless in the top 10 or top 5 or whatever. So I still think that should be on the table for Cleveland, more so than just staying put and taking somebody at 2 that isn't a quarterback. But if they were to stay put and take Abdul Carter, or they were to stay put and take Travis Hunter, and Travis Hunter just doesn't make sense to me as a guy they view as a wide receiver, and they're like, hey, we're going to take this guy at 2. Now, if they took him, I could get it. I could understand it. It's the Shohei Ohtani effect of football, right? He has the ability to be that type of guy, play both ways, and he's so versatile, being able to play both ways. Why the hell not, right? So I can get on board with it. I just don't know if I would clear. That's the one that would be a little head-scratching to an extent, but I'd understand where the thought process was on it, and I still don't think you'd get all that upset. But even if it's Abdul Carter, you shouldn't get all that upset. And my larger point in all this is just listen, whether it's quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, whether it's, first of all, if it's one of those guys, you're not going to be mad because those are the guys that I think most people want. But if it's also Carter or it's Hunter, is that really a pick that you're going to hate? No, it shouldn't be. Those are 2 really talented players that have a chance to be really special at the NFL level. Carter maybe a little bit more so makes sense for the Browns. And that's the thing. Everybody has said throughout this process, yeah, they you want the Browns to get a quarterback, but also think about Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett together. The type of havoc that those 2 could wreak in the NFL. It's a special combo that not a lot of teams have. So I understand the thought process there if they did that. It's not a pick I would hate. And so that's where I kind of get to a point where, all these names make sense on some level. There's not, unless it's some surprise pick out of the blue, and they're like, hey, we're going to take Mason Graham at 2. That would be surprising. I don't know that any of these top 4 guys that are being mentioned, Cam, Shedeur, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, are names that, if the Browns pull the trigger on any of them, should leave you as a Browns fan or Browns fans in general being upset by the pick. You might be upset that they didn't take a quarterback yet at 2, if that's what happens. But I don't know that you should be so heartbroken or devastated or angry or feel like you hate the pick if it's Abdul Carter, because Abdul Carter has a chance to be really, really special. And so, yeah, I still stand by maybe trading back rather than, if you're not going to take a quarterback, trade back. But Carter's not a bad move if they were to do that. And I'd understand it. It would come with the understanding of, I get where their thought process was on this. And clearly they didn't value these quarterbacks or the quarterbacks that are left enough, because I'm assuming Cam Ward's going 1, enough to take 1 or 2. And that can be okay. that can be okay too. If they find it later, maybe they'll try again. Maybe they'll trade back up like I did, get one in the first round, a Shedeur Sanders maybe if he falls, or maybe they do like Jalen Milroe, or maybe they like Jackson Dart. Like they're going to get a quarterback at some point, and maybe they get it wrong. But if they don't evaluate these guys as being worth it, and they take Abdul Carter, I'm not going to sit there and be critical of the team and say they made a big mistake and they screwed up, because I think Abdul Carter is going to be on par with, like, the talent is there. I also think this too. If Carter is the pick, it would also speak to this regime not just panicking and making a rash decision to take a quarterback that maybe they don't, maybe that isn't as good for the draft value that you're getting them at, just because of their job situation and their job status. Because we know this regime very well might get cleaned out next year if the Browns have another bad season. If they have like a 5-win season or less, they're probably cleaning house, starting over. Maybe one of them stays, potentially. We'll see, depending on how the season sort of goes. But like, this is probably like this is their chance to sort of right the ship. And if not, they might be looking for jobs next year. They know that. And Andrew Berry said at the Combine, he's not going to, that's not something that weighs on his mind when he makes off-season decisions, and not something that's weighing on his mind right now. The ultimate proof of that would be if they pass on a quarterback at 2 and take somebody like Abdul Carter. And honestly, as a Browns fan, you should want that. You should not want this team to operate from a place of fear. Now, if they love Shedeur Sanders and they take him, okay. Even if you disagree and you say, why would they do that? They screwed themselves. What a stupid pick. And you don't think Shedeur Sanders is it. That's your opinion. That's fine. But if that's their value and they're great on him, then you got to kind of live with that and understand, like, okay, that's how they feel. But if they evaluate these guys and they decide, you know what, we don't really think the value is there for these guys at 2, then they take Abdul Carter. It's hard to be mad at that, because that tells you they really aren't operating from a place of panic. They're not like, well, we got to take a quarterback just to take one. No, they're going about their business in a smart, thoughtful way and trying to build the best team, and they'll worry about quarterback later when they maybe like one. So again, I am team take a quarterback, because I like these two guys at the top of the class more so than maybe some others. But I also understand where it might not be in the cards, depending on how the evaluation process sort of sorts itself out here over the final month. And if that's the case and they settle on Abdul Carter, I get it. And I think it actually speaks to a regime that's operating from a standpoint of doing business the right way, and not just panicking and making gut reactions if they don't like these guys. Now, I think they like these guys too, but I'm just saying, like, it's going to be hard to be mad if the pick ends up being Abdul Carter over a quarterback. And I know some people will be upset, because that's the most important position in the game, most important position on the field, most important need for the Browns this offseason. But I think there has to be a place where you can find understanding in a pick like Abdul Carter, because of the type of talent that he is. If that ends up being the pick, it should be something you should be able to live with, and it would make sense. It's not something to like hate and be upset about after the fact. Jameis Winston signed with the Giants on Friday. What does it mean for the veteran quarterback market and the way things are going to fall here for the Browns? We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. All right, final segment here on the show. And yes, we did get the news on Friday that Jameis Winston signed with the New York Giants. 2-year deal, I believe. He can earn up to $16 million potentially, $8 million, I think, guaranteed, or at least to start out, or whatever it is. And first and foremost, I think it's important to realize, like, it's not surprising that he didn't end up back in Cleveland. I know that there was like this far-fetched idea of, well, hey, if the well runs dry on these quarterbacks, maybe the easy answer is just go back to Jameis Winston. And so people threw that out there. There were some predictions made about him going back to Cleveland. But guys, like let's just face the facts. The Browns have been adamant this entire offseason that they were that they were prioritizing decision-making in their next quarterback, or their next quarterbacks, I should say. Now, you can laugh and say, well, how does Kenny Pickett prove that? But again, Kenny Pickett's going to be a backup anyway, from my understanding. So yeah, like since Tommy Rees spoke at his introductory press conference as offensive coordinator, they've made it clear We want decision-making. We want decision-making. Great decision-making. That's the important thing. It's why we've linked the Browns to Shedeur Sanders so much, because that is the thing he has said is his number one trait. When you watch the tape, it's his number one. It's the thing he does best. He puts the ball in the right places. He's very, very accurate. And so that's the thing they've been looking at. That's the thing that they want to emphasize. And so Jameis Winston is the antithesis of that. We saw how it all played out last year. Pick sixes to lose games against the Broncos on Monday night. Other just bad interceptions and bad moments and bad plays. And yeah, you had the great performances in there. I mean, that Broncos game was like the epitome of Jameis Winston. It was 500 yards passing nearly and 4 touchdowns, but also 2 pick sixes and 3 interceptions. Like that's Jameis Winston's career in a nutshell. And you just can't win that way. So it's not surprising not coming back to Cleveland. I think the Giants make some sense. I also think, and I said this on social media, Jameis Winston in New York is like must-see TV. Can you imagine? They should do like a Jameis on the street thing where he goes around and just talks to people in New York. I mean, it would be gold. It would be absolute comedy gold. That guy's going to be a good fit for New York. He's definitely somebody who can handle the media. So it'll all work out for him in that sense. But more so what this means from – I know Browns fans are going to be more interested in like what this means for the veteran quarterback market, which continues to just kind of dry up here person by person steadily. And I don't know that this changes a ton. There were reports after Jameis signed that this has no influence on the Giants pursuing other potential free agent quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, etc. So it sounds like they still may try to get one of those guys. Now, Rodgers, it sounds like, is maybe destined for Pittsburgh. He had a long meeting with the Steelers in Pittsburgh at their team facility on Friday. 6 hours he spent there. And he's the next domino that has to fall. He's the one that everyone's kind of waiting on before Wilson signs and then maybe Carson Wentz signs. Like, he's the one sort of holding this thing up. But it certainly sounds like there are indications Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Pittsburgh. And so that would leave the Giants then maybe pushing really extra hard for Russell Wilson. And they might have the money to outbid the Browns because the Browns are operating from a different place financially than some of these other teams are. And that's just the reality that they live in. So if Russell Wilson doesn't come to Cleveland, and this could have happened before the Jameis thing, which is why I don't think the Jameis thing impacts much. I wondered a little bit if this was going to impact the Giants' pursuits of another veteran, but it doesn't sound like it's going to impact it all that much. And so because of that, I feel that you're going to get the Giants probably still making a push for Russ, maybe somebody else, maybe Carson Wentz, and maybe that comes to light. But yeah, so it doesn't change much in that regard. It ultimately is going to come down to like if Aaron Rodgers lands in Pittsburgh, all right, what are Russ's options? Because I think Russ would go back to Pittsburgh too if Rodgers doesn't land in Pittsburgh. But if that's their priority, where does Russ go next? It feels like New York could be the next team that sort of takes that chance on him, takes that swing, and where he ends up, especially with the money being a factor. So then that leaves the Browns maybe pushing for Carson Wentz, who it was reported last week by Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com, is the backup plan. He is the team's backup option as a veteran if they miss on Russell Wilson. So keep that in mind. And, I don't know how people feel about Carson Wentz. I think it's just kind of like one of those quarterback signings where you're like, man, okay. I think if you ended up with Wentz, that would be a clear indication to me that like they are prioritizing a rookie, probably a 2. If they end up with Russ, there's some leeway to figure maybe they don't take 1 or 2 and they ride it out with Russ next year and they take somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round that they think can become great or that they're going to try to develop into a great quarterback. And that could be the way that sort of goes. But we'll see. But that's kind of where the quarterback market sits right now, still in a holding pattern until Aaron Rodgers decides what he wants to do. And again, Pittsburgh sounds like it could be the destination he lands, and then we'll see where things fall from there. But Russ still in play for the Browns, still in play for the Giants apparently as well. And this is we'll see if this sorts itself out a little bit more this week as we're now just a month out from the NFL draft and teams will start making those plans here coming up in the next few weeks. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this week. Trying to get some guests lined up. We'll talk plenty of draft and quarterback talk as always. And I'm sure there'll be some other things that we get into as well. So please hit that subscribe button and make sure you make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.